18 long years. This is the period of time Jorge Masvidal has spent within the sport of mixed martial arts. Upon debuting back in 2003, he has competed under a number of iconic promotional banners, fought a who's who of opponents, refining his skill set all the while learning as he goes. And though we all know just how consistent Father Time is as an enemy to combat sports athletes, at this point, with him at the grand old age of 36, I doubt I'd be alone in arguing that there has never been a better time for Jorge to fight for UFC gold. The problem is that his UFC 261 opponent Kamaru Usman is on a pathway to greatness. Indeed, he has already proven himself to be one of the finest fighters of his era, but to those who watched him make his initial rise, struggling to find opponents who would even step into the cage opposite him, it has been clear for some time now that it will take an almighty effort to remove him from the top of the 170-pound pile. This is an excellent title fight, and as much as it made no sense to grant Masvidal a rematch, given his failure to get the better of Usman on short notice at UFC 251, this is the fight we're getting. And with that in mind, let's dive into Usman Masvidal 2 and see what we can learn. Obviously these two have fought before, with Usman making a relatively easy job of nullifying Gamebred over the course of the 5 rounds they contested back in July of last year. But as we all know, Jorge took that fight on less than a week's worth of notice, replacing Gilbert Burns after a positive COVID-19 test just prior to fight week. And on that night, through the 5 rounds of actions we were presented with, we did get a pretty significant look into how this rematch could play out. Not that Masvidal won't benefit from a full camp. I have no doubt that Kamaru will come into this one confident that he can take home the win in a comfortable fashion. Because if we're to focus on the champion first, he has already been through a murderer's row of contenders within this stacked welterweight division, and through his victories over the likes of Colby Covington, Gilbert Burns, Tyron Woodley, Damian Maia, and of course his original win over Masvidal, we've seen Usman begin to establish an aura around him. Of course, we've seen him tested, we've seen him hurt and dragged into the fire, but if one thing has stood out to me about the Nigerian Nightmare after his war with Colby, his rebound against Burns, and his willingness to fight Masvidal on such short notice, it's that he is a highly determined individual. Highly skilled as well, of that there is little doubt, but in moments we've been given a glimpse into the type of man the champion is beneath it all. And stylistically, I believe that he has every reason to feel confident heading into this matchup, especially given the fact that he has already spent cage time with his next opponent. If you're enjoying this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads, before leaving a comment to let YouTube's algorithms know that we're fast becoming one of the best MMA channels on the platform. I, like many of you, had placed Jorge Masvidal firmly inside a box for the majority of his career. You'd always hear renowned experts and fellow fighters speaking about the merits of this man's talents. Time and time again, you'd hear that Jorge has the best boxing in the UFC, that his veteran savvy has produced a level of fight IQ that isn't always perceptible to the naked eye. I remember when the Brazilian jiu-jitsu master, that is Damian Maia, described Masvidal's jiu-jitsu as the best that he had ever encountered in MMA, and yet, for the vast majority of his pre-resurrection career, Jorge seemed destined to be known as the underrated talent who could never quite find his way into that elite upper echelon. He would drop close decisions and fail to up the tempo or pull the trigger at the right moment. And for a lot of fans, despite him always being a fun fighter, that billing stuck with him no matter how close he managed to get towards breaking through. But then something very, very interesting happened. We all know the story. The long hiatus from the sport, his stint on a reality TV show that really gave him time to stop and reassess everything about himself, and of course when he returned, sporting a bulkier frame and a more grisly appearance, we started to see the type of results that had consistently eluded him for the majority of his career. The resurrection that I alluded to earlier was a term coined by Masvidal himself for his rebirth, and to be honest, I can see it. I genuinely believe that something happened to this guy. A switch had been flicked that had remained untouched over the course of over a decade of competition, and through his wins over Darren Till, Ben Askren and Nate Diaz, Jorge backed up his talk with the type of results that seemed almost uncharacteristic of him. So I think this fight is a lot more interesting than a lot of people believe it to be. In fairness, it's actually a lot more interesting than I myself was ready to accept. I just can't fully write off a guy with Jorge's drive, a man who is willing to reassess to that extent, transforming himself into the type of fighter that he always seemed a degree short of. This has shades of Michael Bisping's late run, but as far as I'm concerned, it's happening with a far more dangerous talent in Masvidal. But across from him is a man who could well be the most talented and impressive active fighter in the sport today, and I don't say that lightly. Usman is good enough to make the best version of Jorge Masvidal look bad, just like Masvidal has the technical skill and experience to find the shot that shuts Usman down emphatically. If Gilbert Burns can land a punch and hurt the champion, you best believe that Jorge can too. Now, do I see that happening? Well, the more I rewatch Masvidal's fights, the more faith I have in his ability to make that slick boxing work for him. But I'm also a big believer in Kamaru Usman and his quest for widespread acceptance. He's not shooting to be given credit as a great fighter, he's aiming for the mantle of the best to ever do it. And though I'd rather just lay the table out for you all and convey my huge excitement for this underrated championship matchup, I will pick Usman to get the job done. I don't think it's an easy fight by any means, but as I said before, I like Kamaru's style as the perfect foil for Jorge's. We saw enough from the UFC 251 headliner to give us an idea of how this fight may look, but don't be so quick to disregard this rematch's chances of being completely different. I'm siding with Usman and his pursuit of greatness here, but I would not be surprised in the slightest if Jorge manages to get the job done. But how do you see this massive welterweight clash going down? Will the champion Usman continue his surge for that pound-for-pound #1 spot? Or will Jorge Masvidal make good on a career's worth of promise, clinching the belt after failing at the first time of asking? Do let us know in the comments section below, we always love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and a comment before subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thank you for watching.